What would you do if the king of your land ordered your baby to die? Would you hide in fear or trust in faith? This is the story of one woman who dared to trust God when fear ruled a nation. And the baby she saved, he would one day set his people free. This is the birth of a deliverer, the story of Moses. Long after Joseph saved Egypt from famine, a new Pharaoh rose to power, one who didn't remember him or the great service he had done. The Israelites, God's chosen people, had grown in number, becoming strong and blessed by God. But this new Pharaoh saw their blessing as a threat. "They are too many," he shouted to his advisors. "If war comes, they might join our enemies and fight against us." So, driven by this fear, Pharaoh turned their freedom into brutal slavery. Day after day, God's people toiled under the blistering hot sun, building Pharaoh's grand cities with nothing but tears and sweat. They were oppressed, their lives made bitter with hard labor. But the more they were crushed, the more they multiplied and spread. It was a testament to a simple truth: no earthly ruler can stop God's promise. Pharaoh, seeing his plan to weaken them failing, grew even more furious. In a fit of rage, he devised a more wicked and horrifying decree: then every baby boy born to the Hebrews must die. He commanded, throw them into the Nile River. The order was absolute. Soldiers marched through the Hebrew settlements, and the air was filled with the sounds of crying mothers as their infants were seized. A darkness of grief and terror fell over the land. But among the Hebrew people, in the middle of this despair, there was one brave woman named Jochebed. She had just given birth to a beautiful, precious baby boy. Looking at his perfect face, she knew she couldn't let him be taken for 3 long months. She hid him from the soldiers, her heart pounding with every knock on the door, every passing patrol. She spent her days and nights quieting his cries, praying constantly, and trusting God to protect what she couldn't. But babies grow, and their cries get louder. When she could hide him no longer, she knew she had to do something drastic. Instead of surrendering to fear, she acted in faith. Jochebed went to the banks of the Nile, gathered reeds, and skillfully wove a small basket. She then sealed it with tar and pitch to make it waterproof. With a trembling heart, she gently placed her baby inside, wrapped in blankets. As she looked at him one last time, she whispered, "God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, please keep him safe." She took the basket to the very river that Pharaoh had designated as a place of death. She placed her child in the water that was meant to drown him, believing that the same river, under God's hand, could deliver him. It was an act of profound surrender. As the tiny basket drifted away on the current, her older daughter, Miriam, bravely followed along the riverbank, watching from a distance, her heart full of hope and anxiety. Downstream, near the opulent gardens of Pharaoh's palace, the princess of Egypt herself, Pharaoh's own daughter, came down to the river to bathe with her attendants. As she walked along the water's edge, she noticed something unusual among the reeds. It was the basket. Curious, she sent one of her servants to fetch it. When the servant brought it to her, the princess opened the lid. Inside she found the baby. Just then the baby began to cry, and his small helpless wail instantly softened her heart. "This must be one of the Hebrew babies," she said, her voice filled with compassion. At that very moment, a young Miriam, who had been watching, saw her chance. She stepped forward bravely and asked, "Shall I go and find a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for you?" And in that moment, God's perfect plan unfolded beautifully. The princess, moved by the sight of the child, agreed immediately. Miriam ran home as fast as she could to bring her mother. Imagine Jochebed's relief and joy. Through this divine arrangement, she was paid by the princess to care for her own child, the very baby Pharaoh had ordered to die. She could now raise him without fear, right under the nose of the man who sought his life. When the child was old enough, Jochebed brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter. As promised, the princess officially adopted him as her own son. She named him Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." And so, Moses grew up in the grandeur of Pharaoh's palace. He was raised as a prince of Egypt, educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, powerful in speech and action. But he was chosen by God for a much higher purpose. He didn't know it yet, but the same God who had miraculously saved him from the river would one day send him back to that very palace, not as a royal child, but as a mighty deliverer to confront Pharaoh and lead his people to freedom. Because God never wastes a rescue. The child saved from the water was destined to part the waters. This story shows us that when the world says impossible, faith looks to God and says, "Watch what he can do." One mother's courage against a king's decree. One baby's cry that changed the heart of a princess. It was all part of one unstoppable divine plan. And this was just the beginning of an incredible journey. Thank you so much for watching. If this story inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more adventures from the Bible. We'll see you in the next episode.